Alright, good afternoon everybody. This is a video from Jamie Denmore. It's a call for humanity. Generally I like to play a news clip that's about an hour or two long, or a minute or two long when I start the show. This one's a little bit longer, so let's take a listen to it. It's pretty inspirational and hopefully you'll enjoy it. And here we go.
So here I am, standing alone in the open. I'm here with a message, hoping to repair what's broken. Nature is struggling, humanity's not on track. We've got our heads in the sand and our pride intact. We seek fulfillment through wealth, but do we achieve it? We want prosperity through consumerism, but is it worth it? Have we actually found freedom, or have we lost it? Because all we do is follow a system and never really challenge it. Can you relate to that? Or is the world too blind to see? I'd always seek the truth, but care what my peers thought of me. I saw a different perspective and struggled by the hour. See, I knew ignorance was bliss, but knowledge could give me power. So now I call for humanity, not just for one nation. I'm opposing separation and standing up to segregation. Whether religious or atheist, since we're the same. Stereotypes are man-made, and it was man who created the game. But are we actually ready to accept this and wake up? Naivety on the line, or are we always going to collide? Are we ready to make a difference? Do we venture into the unknown, or do we stay in our comfort zones and keep on taking the easy ride? Because at sea, it's ships that are safest at shore. But no, that's not what ships were made for. So ask yourself this, why are you really here? Deep, but my question really is sincere. For my generation, are we misled as a youth? Do we rub off our true purpose due to false, misleading truth? Are we prone to propaganda? Are we prone to wrong information? Are we taught to judge each other based on religion, sex, race, culture, class, nation? The list goes on. The moral of this poem may be hard to grasp. I know it's not something usually heard, and it's not your average task. But the point is to stop damaging what we cannot recreate. We shouldn't prioritize selfish desires and let them decide our fate. However, let me tell you, in no way am I perfect and in no way am I better than you. I mean, yeah, I wrote this message myself, but it applies to me. So it's time to start improving, and it's time to start speaking, because resources are lowering and poverty is increasing. We allow cities to get larger, buildings to get taller, but trees to get shorter and forests to get smaller. We're an ingenious species. We could easily change everything, but we're made to think different due to decades of conditioning. We conform to education to confirm our own security, yet it's a biased institution that makes wisdom hold obscurity. Is it actually correct? And does it actually judge intelligence? Or is it just listening to our elders and obedience? Are possessions an illusion of? Are we tricked in our thinking? Are we trying to buy wholeness, and are we trying to buy meaning? Do they always give joy? Do they distract us from reality? Do they determine our identity, and do they alter our morality? I mean, what are our goals? A joke? Can happiness be superficial and our routine a hoax? Do we live for the wrong things whilst the right things choke? Is TV legit, or can it dictate our attractions? Does it actually bring us together, or does it separate us into? We categorize each other via a social hierarchy, but status is made by humans. Really are we? Is ego destroying eco? Are the real problems disguised? Do we really know the truth, or does our society feed us lies? Are we actually filling our voids, and does money hold any true weight? Could we drop our precious comforts to renew our planet's state? It really is time to stop living our lives in shells, because doing nothing for others is the undoing of ourselves. We're all from the same source, so let's see it for what it is. We only have one home, and that home is planet Earth. So are our laws actually just, or can power avoid the prison? Are our governments really innocent, or are they flawed in their decisions? Do they actually care for all life, or only for their own health? Do their motives come from morals, or do they just want power and wealth? They try to justify a war on terror, but it's lasted for over a decade. It's caused 1 million deaths, so don't you think they've overstayed? Is patriotism necessary? Prejudicial? Have we forgotten our common grounds, and have we forgotten what's artificial? I mean, am I truthfully British? Am I really European? Am I actually a Western person, or am I just a human? See, the media highlight the smallest of tragedies in first world countries, but fail to cover that over 90 million worldwide have died from hunger in 12 years. So where do our priorities lie? Britain, China, Russia, America, France, Syria, Iran, Israel, Jordan, Iraq. Whether Western or Middle East, everyone deserves peace. No more national wars, no more bodies deceased. Let's come together as one and keep humanity in one piece. So are we going to be responsible? Are we going to take a stand? Are we going to change our ways and play our cards on the other hand? I'm not saying I have all the answers, and I'm not forcing any suggestions. I'm just saying it's about time we see things differently, and it's about time we ask some questions. So what will you do? How much will you allow?
All right, a powerful message there from Jamie. For some reason, I really enjoy watching that whole video and just the different messages that he's sending out and he's communicating out there. This is Frankie Abbruzzino. This is the Uncensored Report. Hopefully you guys caught my radio show this weekend. I am now on WWBA. Hopefully I have some people throughout the state of Florida that were listening to this weekend's show. It's Saturday. It's at 1 o'clock that are now listening to this show. And you'll notice it's not the same quality. Obviously, I'm in my own studio. I'm doing my own thing here. This is, if you're new, and I suspect a few new ones will be from that radio show, this is a one-man operation. I do everything from the research to putting this together, the website. Every aspect of the show is truly one man. It is unedited, unscripted. Basically, I go out, I'll research a bunch of issues, and I'll wing it. So definitely unscripted, unedited. So sometimes you'll see me just floundering, which happens when you're doing this type of show. Going to talk about a few things, There's a lot of news out there, a lot of news happening since I was on my break. Just so you know, too, I'll be doing my show Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, off on Thursday and Friday. You got some interesting stuff. Something I just put out in the news is on this U.S. regulation of drone usage, which is, some would say, about time. A lot of people have been concerned. I think a couple weeks ago there was a near fatal accident where an airliner almost hit one of these drones. And I know more and more individuals are getting them, and it's going to become more of an issue. So now they're saying that the U.S. is thinking about regulating it in 2015. I'm not big on government involvement, but I think that's an issue where you have to have some involvement. Another story I put out today was basically an embassy over in Tehran, and Barack Obama would not rule that out. I know a lot of these conservative blue dogs are really against it, but I am one that thinks you need an open line of communication. I think it's ridiculous that you will not have an embassy communicate with these companies. Now, you want to ensure safety, and the picture I put up is of the whole embassy issue back when Carter was in control and they overran our embassy. So you want to make sure it's secure. I don't think you just totally want to cut off communications, and that's why if you listen to my weekend show, I fully support putting an embassy in Havana and opening up a line of communications with Cuba. I think it's essential. I don't support giving them everything else that's just going to make a flow of money come their way, but I did support that opening a line of communication. The collapse in the oil prices, a lot of people see this as a great thing. I see it as a great thing because it's helping me fill up my tank. It should lead. You would think it would lead to lower prices at the food market and everything. I'm not sure we're going to see that, but what you don't see is the toll it's taking on these countries and everybody else that had planned on $100, $110 a barrel, and they're now seeing $50, $60 a barrel, and the impact it's having on these different countries. You had who was it? There was an African country. It slipped my mind, but they were out there essentially begging, do something. We need to get this price back up. It's killing our economy. So even though it may be good for us, it may be bad in another world. We are global. We have to remember that. We're going to talk about militarization. Today I'm going to hit militarization big time in regards to the police force. South Korea, they're proposing talks with North Korea. Again, it's essential. We need that line of communication. So I don't know why it's not out there. Why would we ever not? I get the whole thing that we're at war with North Korea. We are legitimately at war with North Korea. We did a ceasefire. We never really ended that war. But you want that line of communication. You have to have it. It's essential. Boyner, the big push to get that idiot out of office. As you know, if you watch the show, I've never been a fan of Boyner. He needs to go. Ferguson, I put up a thing where the police are backtracking now because they called the Michael Brown Memorial a pile of trash. We had a similar issue here where we had an individual that was a Venice High School student. She was hit and killed, and somebody complained about the memorial. The memorial was actually pretty nice, and the parents were actually out there keeping it up. And I personally don't have an issue with any of these little roadside memorials remembering their daughters, their kids, their parents, their grandpas. Most of them are kept up pretty nice. But this person complained, and then the Federal Transportation Authority, they were in there. They were looking at taking away. I don't know whatever happened to that story. It just fell to the wayside. Ukraine turned off their reactors. Hopefully not another Chernobyl accident out there, but there's some issue out there, one of their reactors, which is being checked on. Payments, I'm going to talk a little bit about, I think, about how it does essentially support the world, because that's where most of those demographics are going to go shopping at. Afghanistan, we pulled out of there. They say we pulled out. The end of hostility, we actually have 11,000 troops there, and we're sending mercenaries there. It's under a different name, but they're saying, hey, we withdrew. We really did not. And how can you call it that when you have 11,000 troops still there? But tons of stuff out there about all kinds of stuff. The Italians dealing with their tow truck, or the boat, the ferry boat from Greece having issues, and they're still trying to get people over there. Also, the levels in radiation, with the Obama administration saying it's okay to dramatically, basically increase the level of radiations allowed in our drinking water. Those are some of the headlines out there. Let's go ahead. I personally want to opine on, I'm going to talk a lot about the economy again today. We're going to go right now to the whole militarization of the police, because I think this is an ongoing issue. Now, you should never have it try to happen in New York. And I think we had another shooting today here locally in Florida, Polk County, where 2 officers were shot at. They heard 3 shots. This should not be happening. And my concern is, what has brought us to this? How have we evolved from protect and serve to being so hated? And it's that mentality. I actually was at a dinner with a person, 2 people. They were former officers. Just met them. Very nice individuals. And briefly I talked to him about temperament. And I said, look, I just wouldn't have the temperament to be an officer. I'm someone that you would not want to upset. And so it's a good thing that I'm not there. And the problem is a lot of these forces, these police forces, hire people that have the temperament similar to mine. Now, the individual I was talking to had the very calm, relaxed temperament. He probably is a great fit, and he probably was a great fit as an officer. But the problem is you're putting too many people that shouldn't be in that position, or you're keeping them even though they continue to screw up in that position. And I haven't quite figured it out, if it's the unions, if it's politics, or what is keeping them in that position. Now, before we get into that, though, I want to talk this Supreme Court ruling. I posted it yesterday, 8-1. And this is just craziness. And then we're going to go get into the militarization issue. But this is with police, too, where they essentially came out and they said, hey, look, your Fourth Amendment rights can be violated by police officers. And this is in regards to if an officer is ignorant of the law. An officer pulls you over, and let's say you have something hanging from your car. You have a bumper sticker on the back of your car. He thinks it's obstructing your vision. He pulls you over. There's no law in your state, your county, your city stating that that is a violation of the law. But he pulls you over because he's ignorant of that. He goes in, he checks your car, he finds out, hey, you got heroin in there. He arrests you. And that's essentially what has happened with this case. It's a constitutional case. It was Heehan versus the state of North Carolina. And essentially, the officers went in and violated this person's rights, and this was resulted from a reasonable mistake that law enforcement makes on a regular basis. But what they're in there here saying is that because they're law enforcement, the Supreme Court is saying that ignorance of the law is no excuse, gets thrown out. That doesn't matter if you're an officer. And that evidence of policing during a traffic stop that was for stopping them for a reason that they thought was an illegal issue when it wasn't is justified. And it can be used to prosecute a person. And what happened with this guy is he was pulled over. He had what does it say? He came to an improper stop. And I thought it was more of a light. Yeah, more of a light. They came in there and they said, yeah, the brake light. There it is. I'm sorry, I was looking under the wrong thing. Came in and it was illuminated, but it was flickering. The guy pulled him over, and coincidentally, within that area that he was stopped, there is no law against just having one working light. Well, the guy asked, hey, can I check your car? The person said, yeah, you can check it. He went in, he checked it, and he found drugs on the person. He ended up arresting him for trafficking, and, blase, the rest is history. Went to the court, and it ended up all the way in the Supreme Court arguing, hey, how can this be? How can this guy come in and arrest me under false pretenses? And the Supreme Court, unfortunately, agreed with the officer, with the police, and essentially what is something that's going to violate our Fourth Amendment right. But it's actions like that lead to a lot of this militarization issue. This mentality that they have. How about the body cameras? I think body cameras are a good thing. But the problem is, do they add accountability to this growing police state that we have? And I don't know if they do. A lot of officers will turn their cameras off. We just had an incident. Can't remember which one it was. I think it was the guy in New York. He had a camera. It was shut off. Now, they're supposed to wear these cameras while on duty. Here locally in Sarasota, we're getting 40. We're trialing it. Now, what's happening is Sheriff Knight brought up some excellent issues. He's a local sheriff, and he said, look, I have issues with privacy. What if you're an innocent guy? You're just standing out there, and you're at a party. They come in with their cameras, and they catch you in there with a beer. Well, you weren't doing anything, yet you're now on this camera, and this data is going to be stored. And the storage is a whole other issue, which I've covered on a previous show. Because it's controlled by a third party. It's basically controlled by the same company that does the tasers. What is their name? Taser International. They basically have a lot of these contracts, the majority of the contracts, where they'll take that data that's on the camera and store it for X amount of years. And this isn't the typical storage that you see. Normally when it comes to a police officer, evidence, they store it in their evidence room. You got to go through a process to be able to look at it, to take it out, and it's under a controlled environment. Now they're saying, well, it's under a controlled environment with Taser International, but I don't know if I'm buying into that. And I went through and extensively analyzed this. It was a couple months ago. But what they're in there, Taser's in there, and they're saying, hey, look, over a 12-month experiment, we checked it out, and we found that that reports filed against police officer brutality had dropped 59%, that officer civilians complaining about issues 87%, and I believe that. And I actually think body cameras are a good thing. But I do have those concerns. I have the concern about privacy. If you're not doing anything, like Sheriff Knight said, someone comes into a party, you're just sitting there, you got a beer in your hand, or what if you're sitting there and you're smoking a joint? But they come in the house under the pretense that the party's too loud and to talk to the owner. But they see Joe Schmo over there in the corner. They catch it on the camera. I don't know. You know what I'm saying, though. I'm not fishing around here. There's just issues where the privacy could come into place. And then the storage. The storage was a huge concern because I really looked into that. It was a huge concern. And a lot of people, like this report that I'm looking at here, and I don't know who put this out, Voices of Liberty, they basically had concerns because Taser is involvement in this report, this analysis, they essentially paid for it, is only going to bring them more money. And this is a report that President Obama is relying on for the $75 million that he wants to dump in federal funding to get body cameras. You know, the other question, too, is ensuring the body camera's on. A lot of times they get turned off. A lot of times, and I can't remember which department was doing this, but essentially they have the body cameras, There was an incident. People have concerns about the individual's rights, but they will not release the footage, the coverage of it from the body camera. What's the use of having them? You know, who will get the funding? Who's going to get this funding from Obama? $75 million. That's not enough for the whole United States. Who's going to decide all that stuff? Who benefits from all this extra surveillance? And that's the other thing. Extra surveillance. We're already dealing with cameras that are put up here locally at the jetty, at the restroom, at the pier. Many officers don't like these body cameras because they don't want their privacy violated, they said. And that was a whole other issue that I covered. But the control of the footage, that's huge. Control of the footage. How will it be handled? And the bottom line question is will body cameras help or harm this whole police state militarization attitude that we're seeing out there? I don't know. I don't know, folks. So now they're coming in, and there's this whole push to federalize the police. Federalize. And you won't believe who's out there pushing it. Primarily people like Al Sharpton. What this idiot is doing, being a conciliary of the president, is beyond me. Beyond me. He's a race baiter. He's essentially he's the crux, the root behind bringing up this uprising that led to the police killing in New York. If you talk to many people in New York, Al Sharpton, Mayor de Blasio, are to blame partially because of all the anti-police rhetoric they've been putting out there. So do we need federal intervention? Do we need that? Because that's what Al Sharpton's calling for. He's trying to capitalize on the deaths of Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, and other black men that are out there. And he wants to capitalize on this. So should Congress start hearing to deal with the laws, start hearings? And these hearings essentially will come in, they'll change the jurisdiction, the threshold of a federal cases in policing. Is that what we need, a federalized police force? No, I'm here to tell you we don't. You know, there's this little piece of paper we have. You may have heard of it. It's called the U.S. Constitution. It's the supreme law of the land, or so we thought. And this law restricts federal involvement in criminal and policing matters. Yes, it does. To a very narrow area of jurisdiction. But you know, people like Al Sharpton, they can't be troubled with such trivialities, can they now? No. You can't have that. He's insisting the states can't do their job. So he gets out there. He's got thousands of protesters marching the streets, tens of thousands engaged in similar protests around New York, Boston, everywhere. You got many police that are scared for their lives now, many families of officers scared for their lives, and this should not be. Nobody should promote going out and shooting officers. You know, you had the Black Caucus. They came in, they wrote the Obama. And they insisted that the admin must quickly establish this national commission to review the existing policies that are out there and practices of the local police. And you know what drives me crazy too is when did this turn into a black issue, a black-white issue? And I think I covered this on a radio show, and I said it's not a black-white issue. It's not a black-Hispanic, a Italian-Hispanic, an Italian-Asian. It's a blue privilege issue. Action needs to be taken to change this whole attitude of this militarization, which started with the federal grants. You know, the militarization of the police across the country is creating conditions that essentially will further erode the trust that should exist between the residents and the police officers. Shouldn't it? Isn't it? The proliferation of machine guns, silencers, armed vehicles, aircraft, camouflage, all with local law enforcement. Why is this happening? And it doesn't bode well for that whole relationship that the police and community are trying to build. It doesn't bode well for the future of our cities or for the future of our country. Does it? there's been a cry of many liberal left activists decrying that alleged systematic racism is happening out there in our society, especially with local police departments. Now, there might be some. You know, it's just like any company. You have a few bad apples. It's how you're dealing with them. But this whole source of militarization is not the endemic racism. It's been federal intervention. It's been through the Department of Defense Law Enforcement Support Office. And it's all under this auspice of fighting a drug war on terrorism. You know, since the inception of the Patriot Act, all that stuff, the war on terrorism, you had this 1033 program, and it's transferred $1 billion worth over to these LEOs. More than 8,000 police agencies are currently availing themselves of military equipment. And why? You know, and I've said before in shows, you know, essentially we're not supposed to have a standing army here in the States. You know, that small little piece of paper. But essentially that's what they've done. The government has come in with this 1033 and other grant programs, and they've created a standing army under the guise of being there to protect and to serve. And the federal goodies handed out under this program are transforming police and sheriff's departments into minions of the nationalized, federalized, centralized, militarized police force. And it's putting our freedom at jeopardy. The Stasi. There are many other federal programs under the Department of Justice and Homeland Security that are also aiding this. It's not just the 1033. It goes from the FBI SWAT schools to various DOJ consent decrees. But incredibly, you got these leftist progressives out there who are railing the loudest against federal programs. The same people that are out there, the same senators that will sit there and tell you violate their Second Amendments, take away the right to gun ownership, yet they're walking around with security guards with guns. It's incredible. But they want federalization of the police to alleviate the alleged systematic racism they're seeing out there. And I don't think that's what we need. I think many of you will agree with me. And this whole problem of police abuse will not be solved by nationalizing police authority under some kind of federal czar, or by concentrating local enforcement agencies under the DOJ. You know, the Gestapo. And what this is a prescriptions for even more police abuse to occur out there. Our founding fathers had it right. They had it right in determining that the most effective means of protecting the individual from oppression by government is to disperse police power among multiple local agencies, while encouraging armed citizenry that would serve as the ultimate checkpoint for abuse of power. But we're doing the opposite. We're trying to take away the Second Amendment right of the citizens, and then we're militarizing, we're beefing up the police. Think about it, folks. Just think about it. Now, you do have some good people out there, like Senator Ron Paul. He's out there. He's warning of the dangers of militarized police. Got to drink my coffee. The militarization of police. He's across the nation. You know, he's written a couple op-eds about it, about the militarization combined with the erosion of civil liberties and due process. You know, no-knock searches, board general warrants, pre-conviction forfeiture. That one, forfeiture. You know, if you're new to the show, you may or may not have heard about this. This is essentially asset forfeiture. There's been many stories out there documented on this show. Individuals will be driving down the road. He has $10,000. Gets pulled over for, I don't know, flickering light. They come up, they find out he has $10,000 in cash. Well, what are you doing with cash? You should not have cash. You should not have $10,000 in cash. We're going to have this checked, and if there's just a cent of cocaine or drugs on this, we're going to take it. You can, just about all money goes through drug dealers' hands and probably has some kind of cocaine on it. You can fight this. You can try to get your money back. It's going to cost you just as much to try to get it back. But this is the society. This is what we're encouraging. Not me. So Paul Staff is out there, and they're trying to introduce, or essentially reintroduce, a bill that goes after the federal programs that send military-grade equipment to local police departments. And he's trying to force the Republican-controlled Senate, Congress too, hopefully, to examine these federal programs that are funneling millions of grant money over to these police to arm them. These are equipment that are designed for the battlefield, not for our streets in the United States. This whole 10-3-3. The military-grade equipment. So kudos to Rand Paul for doing something. We got to get away from this nationwide shift where police departments have their officers out there dressing like soldiers, training like soldiers, and using gear like soldiers. Spending billions and millions out there to do this. And this is a concern of mine. It keeps me up at night. All right, folks. We're going to go to a commercial. Now, during these commercials, I'm changing it up a little bit until I get some sponsorship. You're basically going to hear my music, and you're going to... right now, you're just going to say advertise here. If you'd like to advertise with the program, go to the uncensoredreport.com. There's an option there to click on for advertising. It has all the rates. I do this so that I can pull up my next story and get ready for my next conversation without you watching me fish around. Right back. All right, I'm back. And one story I did want to talk about is, I see I got a little bit of bandwidth issue going on there. All right, one thing that I did want to talk about is Korea and this whole hacking scandal with Sony. Are you buying into it? I'm not. This country that can barely do anything besides make a nuclear bomb. They can't feed their people. They can't do many things. They don't have the technology. They don't have the expertise. It almost is like, I almost got to agree with Alex Jones that this is some kind of false flag. All the experts are out there, except for our government, saying this had to be an internal espionage, if you want to call it that. And I heard today, just before coming on the radio, that a lot of the language that was used was for major bandwidth issues. Oh, they did. All right. But so I think we're good now in the bandwidth. So the question is, why are we going to such great lengths to accuse North Korea when we really don't have enough information? Obama's used this to try to work together more with South Korea and Japan to get more information on North Korea. It's inspired China and Russia to go out and work with North Korea. To me, it seems like it's been counterproductive. Very counterproductive. Like I said, you got tons of cyber experts. And they're saying there's no way that they could have been involved in this. They just don't have the technical know-how. Both forensic and other evidence collected unequivocally shows that this was not orchestrated by Korea, but by Sony, or an internal source within Sony. And they're saying that all this evidence that was given to the FBI just is not enough to go out there and accuse North Korea of doing this. And you got to think of the implications behind this. Especially with these Asian countries. They don't want to lose face. And according to the FBI, you got this Garnet piece. And they use this malware, which is similar to what is used by North Korea in attacks against their South Koreans, their neighbors. However, this malware code has been in there for a long time, and anybody could have gone in there and utilized it. And like I said, they're just not capable of a sophisticated hack like this. Many experts will tell you. In Pyongyang, North Korea, they're upset about it. They're upset about the interview movie, sure. But I truly believe that it was some kind of black flag attempt where Sony saw a movie that was a complete failure. They had to try to recoup $40 million. So let's go out and do this. And we'll blame it. And was it far-fetched? I don't think it is. I don't think it is at all. All right, now I want to talk a little bit about finance and about just some of the issues that are coming our way, possibly due to this market conditions. And are we on the brink of war and some type of economic collapse out there by everything that's happening? And it's a good question. And I keep on getting this dollar. Let's just shut that down. I keep getting this error up here. It's driving me crazy. So we go out there. And, everyone wants good news, and you want to pass out good news. And by no means am I a financial expert. But unless I sit here and lie to you, like what I believe the government's been doing with the numbers, then I can't give you a positive story on what's happening out there. A positive story with what's going on with the war, possible war, and the economic possible economic collapse that could take place from all this. And sorry, as I'm talking, I'm pulling up because I'm having issues with my system, if you haven't been able to tell. So I'm out there, and we're looking at this whole matrix, if you will. And essentially, in exchange for less stress and less worry, you will be led unknowingly into another financial ruin or a nuclear Armageddon, because you're not hearing a lot of the information that's actually out there. You're not hearing a lot of information at how Russia, China feel right now towards the West aggression. You're not hearing a lot of information about the true financial numbers. The neoconservatives out there, the neocons, they gave us Grenada and the Contra affair in Nicaragua. President Reagan fired them. They were prosecuted, but they were pardoned by Bush. The neocons, they reemerged again under the Clinton administration. They engineered the breakup of Yugoslavia, that whole war on the Serbia, the expansion of NATO to the borders of Russia. Neocons have dominated the George Bush regime. They controlled the Pentagon, the National Security Council, the office of the Vice President. They gave us 9/11, the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, the beginning of the destabilization of Pakistan and Yemen, the U.S. Africa Command, and so much more. Loss of constitutional protections, torture, unaccountability of the executive branch. In comes the Obama. They've held no one accountable for crimes under the Bush regime, thus creating the precedent that executive branch is above the law. And instead, Obama's going after whistleblowers and told them the truth about government crimes. They're out there telling the truth about government crimes. Obama says, we can't have that. We're going to prosecute you. Throw you in jail. And this is primarily driven a lot by the neocons and their influence that they have over the Obama and over previous presidents. Neocons such as Susan Rice, the National Security Advisor. And neocon is the extant political ideology. The ideology is that America or else. Neoconservatives believe that history has chosen the United States to exercise hegemony over the entire world, thereby making the U.S. exceptionally and indispensable. Obama's basically gone out there and declared as much. And this whole ideology gives the neocons tremendous confidence and drive. Just like Karl Marx and his country had chosen the workers to be the ruling class, gave early communists the confidence and drive to go out and do many things they've done. And what this has done is made many of the neocons reckless. Very reckless. And they're doing this to advance their agenda. To propagandize the population of the U.S. and Washington's vassal states. You know, these prostitutes deliver the neocon lies to the unsuspected public. How about the one with Russia? You know this is a lie if you watch this show, that they invaded the annexed Ukrainian province. How about Putin intends to reconstitute the Soviet Empire? I haven't seen any evidence of that. Russia is a gangster state without democracy. So is the United States, for that matter. Russia's a threat to the Baltics. I haven't seen that. Poland. So we're out there, we're arming them. We're putting NATO on the border. We're doing a military buildup. All of this in an effort to militarily contain Russia, because the U.S. is alleging a lot of stuff, which if you look at the grand scheme and all the news that's out there, I'm not buying that it's 100% accurate. And, you know, the neocons have gone out there and they've made it clear that the U.S., will not accept Russia and China as sovereign countries with economic and foreign policies that are independent of the interests of Washington, like the BRIC. That's something they're doing out there to basically get rid of the dollar as the reserve currency. And they want Russia to be, in China, to be acceptable only as a vassal states, like the UK, Europe, Japan, Canada. And clearly, the neocon formula is the formula for the final war. You know, they keep spewing out this anti-Russia propaganda. You know, essentially comparing Putin as the new Hitler. Now, good guy, trust me, he's not a good guy. And he's done a lot of bad. But I don't know if he deserves all the credit that the United States is dumping on him. Since Clinton regime, Washington has been acting against Russia's interest. You know, the whole globalization, it's a hegemonic project. Major military and covert intelligence operations are being undertaken simultaneously with the Middle East, Eastern Europe, the Iranian Africa, Central Asia, you name it. And what this does is the U.S. military agenda basically combines both the major theater operations as well as covert action towards the whole destabilization of these sovereign states. And under this global military agenda, the actions undertaken by the Western Military Alliance, you know, those NATO, U.S., Israel, well, this action taken in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Palestinian, all over the world, they are coordinated at the highest levels of the military hierarchy. And we're not dealing with some kind of piecemeal military or intelligence operation. You know, back in August 2014, the attack on Gaza by Israel was undertaken in close consultation with the U.S. and NATO. The actions in the Ukraine and their timing coincided with the onslaught of the attack of Gaza. And most military operations undertakings are closely coordinated with a process of economic warfare. You know, and it consists with not only taking imposing sanctions on sovereign countries, but also deliberate acts of destabilization of finances and currencies. Just ask Venezuela. They've accused us there of doing that. So now the U.S., we get to deploy. We deploy Eastern Europe. We have our intervention under a humanitarian mandate over in Africa, right, with Ebola. We're threatening China with our pivot of Asia. You know, and military maneuvers are being conducted at Russia's doorstep, which is not, trust me, they're not fans of that. And it's just escalating that tensions. You know, in September we initiated airstrikes against Iraq and Syria under the pretext of going in there and getting ISIS out of there. When in fact, the Western military alliance has been out there supporting financially and training ISIS. It's crazy. You know, essentially Americans are simply unaware as to what's going on around us. Many of us don't know the peril that's out there. And that's just the war side. I cover daily the economic numbers. I'm going to try getting into them. Our only hope right now is some outside political system. You know, that the house of cards, the rigged markets erected by policymakers for the benefit of those 1%ers, that it doesn't decollapse. That may be our only salvation. Think about it. You know, many financial organizations are worried about the lack of liquidity and fixed incomes. The derivative market, which somehow just got thrown onto the taxpayers. Many will ask, is this wealth of the 1% vulnerable to economic collapse? Will war initiated to protect the wealth and blame the Russians or Chinese? Is that what we see here? And essentially, maybe that is the kind of collapse that we should expect. Present governments with social, political, and economic insecurity, they're getting ready for something major to break out. You got the political impotence of the American and the vassalage of the Western world. And they're imposing no constraints on Washington. Economic collapse brings revolutions and the demise of the existing order out there. And, you know, as hard as an economic collapse would make it for people to survive, the chances are greater that they'll survive that than they will a nuclear war. And you see this just with the numbers. You know, I've covered this all the time. The unemployment numbers on this week, my radio show on WWBA goes throughout the state of Florida, but you can get it nationally on my site. Essentially, the whole show, I'm going to spend an hour just talking about what's happening to the demise of the middle class Americans. How these markets are all basically a scam. They're fixed. You know, and like I said, I cover this inflation. Inflation is not 1.5%. Go to Publix, it's not 1.5%. But it's 1.5% if you're out there cherry picking the numbers that you're going to use. If you're given 200 numbers and you could cherry pick 30 each month that could derive 1.5%, then you're going to do it. And that's what the government's doing. Same with unemployment. They're not looking at the full context of everything that's out there. They're creating their own little numbers, their own way of calculating unemployment so that it is at under 6%. When in reality, it's more like 18%, 14%. It's a sham. A sham. All right, folks. Now I think that's going to be it for the show today. I'll try to I had like 15 other things on there, but I'm so busy today with a million different things. I do have a local public show if you're here in Sarasota County, which I do at 6 o'clock, and that's live. It's about a half hour long, where I cover Sarasota County related news. So you can find it easily. Just go to thescoopradioshow.com. As always, this show at 11 Friday at the uncensoredreport.com. And then you have my Saturday radio show at 1 o'clock. It can be found on 8:20 a.m. I know that guy is planning on franchising it throughout the nation, but if you're not in a radio location, then you can catch it on my website, theuncensoredreport.com. I do put it up there for your listening pleasure. All right, that's going to be it. Get out there, enjoy your day. New Year's Eve right around the corner. It's beautiful here. It'll be almost 80 and sunny, so I'm going to go out there and work, not enjoy my day. I'll see everybody later.